The best commentaries from the last video.
I never thought I'd be the guy hiring a private investigator to follow my own wife. But life has a funny way of proving you wrong. My name is Daniel, I'm 42 years old, and up until recently, I thought I had a pretty normal life. I was married to my wife, Emily, for 12 years. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, or at least I thought we were. Then things started getting weird. At first, it was little things. She got a new phone and suddenly started keeping it locked all the time. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter, but now? It was either in her pocket or face down on the table. Then there were the late nights. Emily always worked a demanding job, but lately, she was coming home later and later, with vague excuses about extra projects and work emergencies. I tried not to be that husband. The paranoid one. The jealous one. But the biggest red flag? The way she started looking at me. Something had changed. It wasn't just distance. It was something deeper, something colder. Like she was looking through me instead of at me. Conversations felt forced, our routines felt robotic, and whenever I asked if something was wrong, she'd just smile and say, "Of course not, babe." And I almost believed her. Until the night I caught her lying. It was a Thursday. She told me she was working late at the office, but I happened to be out with a friend near her building. On a whim, I decided to drive by. Not to spy on her, just to maybe bring her a coffee, surprise her, remind her that I cared. Her car wasn't there. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice perfectly normal. "Hey babe, I'm still at work. What's up?" I didn't say anything at first. My stomach felt like it had dropped through the floor. "You're at the office?" I finally asked. "Yeah," she said without hesitation. "It's a long night." I stared at the empty parking lot. There were two possibilities. Either Emily had taken an Uber to work, or she was lying to me. I didn't know which option was worse. I hung up, drove home, and sat in the dark for hours, waiting for her to return. When she finally walked through the door past midnight, she kissed me on the cheek, told me she was exhausted, and went straight to bed. I stood there, staring after her, heart pounding. That was the moment I knew. Something was going on. And I was going to find out exactly what. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Emily was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just lied to my face the night before. "Morning, babe," she said, smiling as she slid a cup toward me. "You okay? You look tired." Tired? I barely slept. My mind had been spinning all night, replaying the moment she told me she was at work, when I knew for a fact she wasn't. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a long night." She didn't seem to notice the edge in my voice. That's when I knew I had to be careful. If she was lying this easily, without hesitation, she had practice. And if she had practice? That meant this wasn't a one-time thing. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started paying attention. Over the next few days, I kept track of everything. Where she said she was going. How long she was gone. Who she claimed she was with. And the more I watched, the more the patterns started to show. One night she said she was having dinner with her coworkers. But when I casually asked which restaurant, she hesitated. A small, almost imperceptible pause. Then she said a name. I waited a few seconds before asking. "Oh, is that the one downtown?" She nodded too quickly. "Yeah. That one." Except I had just made up the location. That restaurant wasn't downtown. It was across the city. She didn't even notice her mistake. A week later, she told me she had to leave town for a weekend work retreat. That was my breaking point. I knew I could sit there, let the doubt eat me alive, keep second-guessing myself, or I could get answers. So I did something drastic. I hired a private investigator. I found a guy online with stellar reviews, someone discreet, someone who had handled situations like mine before. When I met him, I told him everything. The late nights. The lies. The missing details. He nodded like he had seen it 100 times before. You want me to follow her? I hesitated, just for a second. Then I swallowed my pride and nodded. Because at this point, I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And deep down, I already knew I wasn't going to like what he found. Hiring a private investigator felt surreal. It was something you saw in movies, something that happened to other people, not to me. But here I was, sitting across from a guy who made a living exposing secrets, handing him photos of my wife. I'll start tracking her this weekend, he said, slipping the pictures into his folder. I'll keep you updated. I barely got any sleep that night. Part of me hoped he wouldn't find anything. That I was just paranoid, overthinking, jumping to the worst conclusions. But another part of me knew better. The weekend came, and Emily left for her work retreat. I played it cool, kissed her goodbye, even told her to have fun. She smiled like nothing was wrong. That smile made my stomach turn. A few hours later, I got my first update from the investigator. She didn't go to the work retreat. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. I called him immediately. Where is she? She checked into a hotel across town. Alone. No work colleagues, no conference rooms, nothing. The world felt like it was tilting under me. Is she with someone? I don't know yet, he said. But I'll find out. I barely moved for the next few hours. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Then, around 9 p.m., I got the update that shattered everything. A man just arrived at her room. I felt like I was going to be sick. Do you want me to get photos? The investigator asked. I closed my eyes, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Yes, I said through clenched teeth. Get everything. Because at that point, I needed more than just suspicions. I needed undeniable proof. I don't remember much after that phone call. My mind went blank, my body numb. I just sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for the investigator to send the proof I already knew would destroy me. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then my phone buzzed. New message. I hesitated before opening it, my thumb hovering over the screen like some part of me still believed I could stop this, undo everything. But I tapped it anyway. And there it was. A photo of Emily, standing in the doorway of her hotel room. Wearing a robe. Smiling. Pulling him inside. Some guy I had never seen before. Not a coworker. Not anyone from our social circle. Just some stranger. A second photo came through. This one made my stomach turn. The door closing behind them. I dropped my phone. My head spun, my vision blurred. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This was it. The confirmation. The undeniable proof. She was cheating. Lying. Living an entirely separate life right under my nose. The investigator called me a few minutes later. I barely had the strength to answer. You okay? He asked, his voice more sympathetic than before. He had probably seen reactions like mine hundreds of times. I swallowed, my throat dry. Yeah. I just need to know everything. He sighed. All right. I'll stay here, track when he leaves, get timestamps, maybe more photos if you want them. I clenched my jaw. Yeah. Get everything. Because at this point, there was no fixing this. The only thing left to do was decide how I was going to make her regret it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, phone in my hand, staring at the photos. Each one felt like a knife to the gut. Emily, laughing with another man. Emily, pulling him into her hotel room. Emily, proving that every doubt, every suspicion I had ignored, had been real all along. At some point, the investigator sent a final update. He left around 2 a.m. She stayed in the room alone. Like that detail was supposed to make it any better. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront her yet. No screaming, no accusations. I needed more. I needed to understand exactly how long this had been going on. And more than anything, I needed to make sure she didn't see me coming. So I went on like everything was normal. When Emily came home from her work retreat, I played my role perfectly. I kissed her, asked how the trip was, even listened as she told me about the boring meetings and long speeches. She lied to my face without even blinking. And that's when I knew I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to destroy her. Step 1. Find out everything. Over the next few days, I started digging. If she had been reckless enough to lie about her whereabouts so easily, maybe she had been reckless in other ways too. I checked our phone bill, found dozens of late-night calls to a number I didn't recognize. I went through our shared laptop, found deleted messages that I recovered with a simple software. And what I found? It was worse than I expected. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a fling. Emily had been cheating on me for months. Text after text, message after message, plans to meet up, inside jokes, conversations that made my blood boil. And the worst part? She had used our money to book that hotel. That was it. That was the moment I felt the last shred of love I had for her snap. Because now, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about payback. And step 2? Was making sure she lost everything. I wasn't just going to leave Emily. I was going to make sure she felt it. Every single ounce of betrayal, every bit of humiliation she thought she could hide. I spent the next few days collecting everything I needed. Screenshots of messages, timestamps of phone calls, credit card statements that showed she had been using our money for her little adventures. I even had the investigator pull up information on the guy she was seeing. Turns out, he wasn't some random fling. He was her co-worker. Married. With 2 kids. That changed everything. Because now? This wasn't just my battle. His wife deserved to know too. Step 1, legal first, emotional second. I met with my lawyer before doing anything else. I wanted to make sure I had the upper hand when the divorce hit. My state had laws that favored the wronged spouse, and with the amount of evidence I had, Emily was going to get nothing. No alimony. No house. Not even a dime from our savings. She had no idea that the moment I filed, her financial stability was gone. Step 2, the public exposure. Now, I could have just left it at that. Could have walked away, let her deal with the fallout in private. But after reading her messages, where she joked about how stupid I was, how easy it was to lie to me, yeah, that mercy was gone. I made copies of everything. Every photo, every message. Then I sent them. To her family. To her closest friends. To her co-worker's wife. The last one hit the hardest. His wife called me within an hour, her voice shaking. She had suspected something but never had proof, until now. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered, "Thank you for telling me." I knew that whatever happened next in his life, it wasn't going to be pretty. Step 3, the grand finale. With everything set in motion, I finally confronted Emily. I waited until she got home, acting completely normal, letting her think everything was fine. Then I sat her down at the dining table and slid the folder of evidence in front of her. She frowned, confused, flipping through the pages. Then she froze. Her face went pale. The moment she realized exactly how much I knew. That was worth every second of planning. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "So," I said casually, "how was that work retreat?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in our entire marriage, she was speechless. And I was just getting started. The silence stretched between us. Emily just sat there, flipping through the evidence like she could somehow change what was right in front of her. Phone records. Screenshots. Hotel receipts. A picture of her standing in the doorway, pulling her married coworker inside. She swallowed hard, then finally looked up at me. "I can explain." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, this I gotta hear." She hesitated, probably trying to decide what angle to take. Play the victim? Blame me? Cry? She went with option 3. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for my hand. I didn't mean for this to happen, Daniel. It was a mistake. A mistake. That word made my blood boil. I yanked my hand back, shaking my head. No. Forgetting to pick up milk at the store is a mistake. This was a choice. Over and over again. She flinched, her fake tears drying up real quick. You don't understand. I cut her off. Oh, I understand just fine. I leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. I understand that you used our money to book hotels for another man. I understand that you've been laughing behind my back for months. I understand that you thought you'd never get caught. Her face paled, and for the first time, I saw it, fear. Good. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Here's the deal, Emily. I already filed for divorce. My lawyer has everything. You get nothing. No house, no savings, no alimony. You want a fresh start with your little boyfriend? Hope he's got a big paycheck, because you're going to need it. Her lips parted slightly. Wait, Daniel, let's talk about this. I raised an eyebrow. Like how you talked to me about sleeping with another man? She flinched again. I wasn't done. I also sent everything to your family. I watched as her face drained of color. Oh, and his wife? Yeah. She knows too. Her hands started shaking. You ruined me. I smirked. No, Emily. You ruined yourself. She stared at me, stunned, like she was just now realizing there was no way out of this. No way to lie her way back to safety. Her perfect little world. Cracked. Breaking. Shattering right in front of her. And I was loving every second of it. Emily just sat there, silent. I could see it in her eyes. She was scrambling, searching for some way to spin this, some excuse that would make it all disappear. But there was no escape. I can fix this, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. We can fix this. I laughed. Actually laughed. Fix what, Emily? Our marriage? The one you set on fire and danced around like it was a bonfire? She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to cry but couldn't summon the tears fast enough. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. I was. Save it. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. You were thinking just fine when you were booking hotel rooms. You were thinking just fine when you were sneaking around, lying to my face. You were thinking just fine when you called me stupid in those messages. Her breath hitched. Yeah. I had seen everything. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You thought you were so smart, huh? Thought you could lie to me, spend our money on your little fling, and walk away without consequences? I shook my head. Nah, Emily. That's not how this ends. Panic flickered in her eyes. Wait, what do you mean? I stood up, towering over her. It means I'm done. You're out. I've already talked to the bank. You have 2 weeks to get your stuff and find somewhere else to live. I don't care where you go. Hell, maybe your boyfriend's wife will take you in after she's done divorcing him. Her mouth fell open. Wait, what? Oh yeah. I smirked. She's divorcing him. Found a great lawyer. The kind that's gonna take him for everything. Emily's face went sheet white. I tilted my head. Did you really think this wouldn't touch him? That his wife would just roll over and take it? Her breathing sped up. No, this can't be happening. I crossed my arms. Oh, it's happening, sweetheart. She stood up abruptly, hands gripping her hair. You don't understand, Daniel. No. I cut her off coldly. You don't understand. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. You played the game. And you lost. She stared at me, completely, utterly broken. For the first time since this all started, I was in control. And she? She was the one left begging. Emily stood there, trembling, her entire world collapsing in real time. And I felt nothing. No sympathy, no second thoughts. Just the cold satisfaction of knowing she had dug her own grave, and now, she was lying in it. You can't just throw me out. She finally choked out. We built this life together. I let out a bitter laugh. We didn't build anything, Emily. I built a life. You burned it to the ground. She shook her head frantically, like she could somehow undo everything. Please, Daniel. I messed up. But we can fix this, I know we can. I just stared at her. You think I'd ever trust you again? Silence. For the first time, she had no answer. Her eyes darted around, panic setting in. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. She let out a shaky breath, her face crumbling. I love you, she whispered. I smirked. No, Emily. You loved having security. You loved knowing I'd always be there. You loved using me while sneaking around with someone else. I leaned in slightly. But love? Nah. You don't even know what that word means. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks, but I didn't care. She wasn't crying because she lost me. She was crying because she lost everything. Her home. Her reputation. The comfort of a man who actually cared about her. And soon, she'd lose even more. See, I had one final card left to play. Her job. I hadn't just sent the evidence to her family and friends. I had also sent it anonymously to HR at her company. Why? Because she had been sleeping with a married coworker. In most companies, that's a career ender. And in hers? It was absolutely against policy. She had no idea yet. But when that call came? When she realized she wasn't just losing her marriage, but her entire livelihood? That was when she truly understood what she had done. And I'd be long gone, watching from a distance as her perfect little world finished crumbling to dust. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. No more lies. No more second-guessing myself. No more Emily. She was still in the house, but barely. I could hear her moving around upstairs, probably packing, probably still in denial about how fast her life was falling apart. I took my time drinking my coffee, enjoying the silence. For once, it wasn't suffocating, it was peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A message from an unknown number. You got what you wanted. I lost my job. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I smirked. There it was. The final piece falling into place. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. She wasn't my problem anymore. By noon, she came downstairs, dragging a suitcase behind her. Her eyes were red and puffy, but I didn't care. She stopped in the doorway, gripping the handle so tight her knuckles turned white. This is really it, huh? I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. Yup. She swallowed hard. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Again, not my problem. She let out a shaky breath. Daniel, I cut her off. Save it. She flinched. I stood up, walking toward the door. You made your choices, Emily. Now you get to live with them. I opened it wide, gesturing outside. And right now? That means getting the hell out of my house. She hesitated for a second, just a second, like she thought she still had a chance. Then she stepped outside. I didn't wait for a dramatic goodbye. No lingering looks, no final words. I just shut the door in her face and locked it. And as I stood there, staring at the closed door, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. No more lies. No more betrayal. No more Emily. She was gone. And for the first time in years, I was finally free.